Actor and author Bruce Marchiano is perhaps best known for his moving portrayal of Jesus in the video, The Gospel According to Matthew. Have a look.
I am willing.
He said,
Be clean.
Immediately he was cured of his leprosy.
And Bruce Marchiano is here today to shed even more light on the heart of God in flesh in his book, Jesus, the Man Who Loved Women. Bruce, welcome to Full Circle.
Thank you very much. It's really a pleasure to be with you.
So good to have you. We just love the way you portrayed Jesus in that video, because it really does bring the heart of God in flesh to mankind in a very visible way. And you've done that beautifully in this book as well. Why was it important to write a book about women?
You know, gosh, one of the things is that since that movie was released, I began to get speaking invitations, and just, you begin to read letters, and I just noticed a need that a lot of women just don't know he loves them.
I'm sure they gravitated to the Jesus of joy.
It was like a magnet, you know, just the revelation of joy and the passion and the intimacy, the affection, you know, and just this thing, he loves you, he loves you. So I saw this great void there, most especially with women, you know, judging from the letters that I got, and that was kind of the beginning of the thought process toward the book.
I think one of the beautiful things about this book, and what I appreciate, is that, you know, as an actor, you have to try to get yourself inside the head of the different people in the story to understand how it might have happened. And I see how you do this in the book, which I think would be so cool for people who don't like to read the Bible, or maybe have never read the Bible, to open this up and see these timeless stories, but from a perspective that you've never read before. You're trying to understand. What was it like? Like, how did you do that to try to understand how this woman might be feeling, how Jesus might be feeling?
Yeah. I remember in preparation for the film, and I say that because it's the same preparation for the book, you know, Jesus it was all about relationship. We tend to picture Jesus aloof, distant, not in relationship with people. But the truth is that he was more about relationship than anybody who ever walked the planet. He gave his life for the purpose of having relationship with you and I, and everyone who hears my voice right now. So, so one of the you know, the focuses was this thing of relationship. How would Jesus have related to people? And in the case of the women that he encountered, you know, how would he have related to this woman specifically? And to take it the next step, I remember my mind went immediately to Psalm 139:13. I hand formed you while you were yet in your mother's womb. In other words, that woman, for instance, for your viewers who know the story that he encountered at the well in Samaria, you know, it's not just some woman. I hand formed you in your mother. It's his baby, if I can put it that way.
You already knew her.
Girl.
You already knew her.
You know, the title may scare off men. Jesus, the Man Who Loved Women. So it's all about women, right? But I found that as I was reading this, that this is actually a book also very much for men. That you talk about that the heart of a man is through his actions, and that's what you wanted to show about Jesus, about his heart and his actions toward women. But speak on that for men as well, that this is really for them too.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, I don't want to beat up on the guys, sorry guys, but you know, you look at the problems, and 99.9% of it flows from men. You know, I just have to say it. On a grand scale, when's the last time you saw a woman declare war? You know, and on a private scale, you just constantly hear you know, my husband left me for this guy, my husband did this, you know. You so rarely hear my wife left me. Oh, I said that wrong, didn't I? My husband left me for this woman. You so rarely hear the opposite. So, you know, at the end of the day, one of the defining factors of manhood is how we handle the women that God has entrusted us to. And I know personally what a great challenge, you know, for me as a man, to deal with them as Jesus would have dealt with them, as just his precious, precious little girls.
One of the things I so appreciated, Bruce, about the way you wrote the book is that, yes, you wrote it from the perspective of Jesus dealing with these women from the Bible, but you very much wrote it from the Father heart of God the Father. So really it was the Trinity in action on the planet. When Jesus was acting, you know, out the situations with these women, he was seeing them through the eyes of a father and relating to them through the Holy Spirit.
Yeah, you know, I mentioned that woman at the well, and for your viewers that don't know the story, I mean, here's a woman that had just been through relationship after relationship, and you know, our tendency is just to go, how can a woman live like that? But Jesus, he sees the heartbreak of his little girl that would lead her to seek love so desperately. And his pursuit of her heart that day, and wanting to call her into the safety of his heart, just an overwhelming thing. I like to say that, you know, you can take your attitude toward your little girl and your desire for her and her hope for you, multiply it a kabillion times, and you've got the heart of God, the heart of Jesus.
Your beloved pastor, Jack Hayford, says on the back, any man who captures the heart of this book will not only be able to capture the heart of any woman,
Hello.
he will fulfill her with his self-sacrificing love. You use another man to launch us in this book, and I think we all loved how you related Don Quixote to the mission of this book. Expand on that.
Yeah, the story of Don Quixote, here's a man who just refuses to bow to the crumminess of the world around him, and he begins to fantasize and recreate the world in his own imagination as, you know, he's a knight in shining armor, and it's all about chivalry and nobility. You mentioned a man's heart is revealed in his actions. This guy just refused to bow to the crumminess of the world around him, and within that story, he encounters a woman who, you know, was a prostitute in her practical life, but in his eyes, she was the Princess Dulcinea. He didn't see any of the dirt. He didn't see any of the darkness. He didn't see the attitude or the way she was kicked around. All he saw was her beauty, and therein is the beginning of the understanding of the heart of Jesus.
And the impossible dream. We could all sing
I was going to sing it actually, but I'm not.
Became possible.
Yes.
Became possible.
Yeah.
The prostitute caught the vision and rose to something more than she had been living.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
Because of how the man treated
and then
her.
and then she saved him by speaking the words that he did in that time, that he saw. She needed him and she had fallen in love with him and saved his life. Beautiful.
Yeah, through the course of the play, she constantly pushes his love away. There's actually a line, she says, of all the men who have beaten and battered me, you're the cruelest of all, because her heart was so hard against love. But at the very end, you know, he dies. Hate to give away the end of the show to everybody, and her boss, so to speak, he says, "Come on, let's go," and he calls her by her real name, Aldonza. Well, Don Quixote gave her the name of the Princess Dulcinea, and she looks him in the eye and she says, "My name is Dulcinea."
I just got goosebumps.
Yeah, not going to go back to that anymore.
Not going back.
And I love that, you know, one of the things that was a revelation to me, and I guess we don't humanize Jesus, you're right, because he's this character that sometimes you can't relate to because he's so good, right? And we know that most of us in our own heart are not so good. And you talk about the chivalry and the desire to protect women, especially in the story, there's, you know, a woman that was caught in adultery, they were going to stone her to death. And you say, you're sure that rising up in Jesus would be this, you know, I want to protect her and save her and, you know, chivalrous. Like, where did you come up with that? Because that has never occurred to me.
Again, it goes back to, that's his little girl. And, you know, as a man, you know, just the thought of someone knocking my little girl around, I mean, I'll gladly go to jail to end that, you know. And so you can imagine in the perfection of love rising up in his heart, the perfection of defense and protectiveness over his little girl. I have zero doubt in my mind, I'm no theologian, that just a righteous indignation rose in him. And, you know, you mentioned that Jesus was perfect in his goodness. But at the same time, he was 100% human, and I think
He clenched his fist a couple
he
times.
clenched his fist. I mean, there was a part of him that wanted to take those guys out, but then you know the self-control and yeah.
And he not only that, but he restored dignity and value to women. Yeah. I think in a time when Jesus lived, women were treated obviously second-class citizens, and we know that still happens around the world today. And what a message for women who feel second class, who aren't seen. We've done shows on the Dalits in India where they're even less than animals. And I think what an amazing story of truth for women to get Jesus, that he saw beyond the cultural, you know, norms and how things should be. And he said, no, I'm against that. I actually see you and I know you. And I think for a lot of women, one of the hardest things is that we don't think that we're seen.
Yeah.
We're not seen, and I think, or valued, and Jesus reaches right in and says, I see you and know you.
Yeah. You know, we live in a world that things just aren't right, and, you know, as good as it gets, a woman isn't treated perfectly as the Lord would have a woman treated.
He delights in us.
And he delights in you ladies and every lady who hears my voice. And at the end of the day, through all the human brutality, through all the betrayals and the mistrust and the fathers who fell short of perfect fatherhood and all of that stuff that just heaps upon a woman's heart, stands the heart of the living God, who just cries a million tears for every woman's tear in the night and stands with open arms and just says, come to me. I love you. At the end of all that mess, I love you.
Wow. We're just in our final remaining moments with Bruce Marchiano and his book, Jesus, the Man Who Loved Women. Cheryl, I know you wanted to throw one more question his way.
Yeah, you know, I was reading this book and I was thinking about women or men who have an idea of who Jesus is from church or culture or history or stories, but I don't think they've ever seen him in this way. And I'm just wondering, for people like that who want to read this book or are reading this book, what is the message or the thought that you'd like them to leave, or the idea of Jesus?
You know, people quite often, and it's a tragic thing, and the reasons for it I don't know, but people quite often, they think of Jesus, they think of God, and there's this sense of condemnation. There's this sense of, you know, all the crummy things they've done in their life flash before their eyes. And I think, you know, kind of most especially for a woman, there's a certain, you know, I don't know, sense of shame that goes with things that have happened, I don't know. And to walk around with a sense of God hates me because of this, or I'm disqualified from happiness, or I have no value because of A, B, C, and D, and it can be a number
or
of things.
I'm not lovable. How many women
I'm
tell
not
me
lovable.
that?
You know, you could go down a long list of senses of condemnation. And I would just say, woman, just be set free from that, because it's a lie, man. It's just a lie. The reality of Jesus is no matter who you are, no matter where you've been in your life, no matter the number of mistakes, no matter how many times you've woken up in places and thought, you know, what's this guy's name? It all he loves you.
I love the line from Don Quixote.
He just loves you.
Imagine a man. Well, you can. You can imagine this God-man, because he is everything your heart desires.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Beautiful way to end today's show. Bruce Marchiano, thank you for being with us, and thank you for joining us here on Full Circle. And I just want to remember that our prayer lines are available even when we're not on the air. As always, keep your eyes on Jesus. It's all about him.